She smiled like nothing was wrong. But I knew. Rachel twirled into the bridal suite, her long blonde hair shining, her laugh just a little too loud, her white dress clinging a little too perfectly. My chest tightened, my hands clenched around. The bouquet. Who wears white to their sister's wedding? I forced a shaky laugh, brushing it off, pretending I didn't feel the ripple of discomfort pulsing through the room. "Bold choice, Rach," I murmured, voice light. She tossed her hair, smirking. "Oh, Em, no one's looking at me today." But wasn't that the point? Jason slipped into the room, his eyes flicking briefly to Rachel before landing on me. My heart clenched. His smile felt too smooth, his kiss on my cheek too quick. I wanted to believe it was nerves. I wanted to believe it was wedding day chaos. But something inside me stayed tight, coiled, watchful. Sophie caught my eye from across the room, her brows furrowed, her mouth tightening. We'd been best friends since college. She could read me like a book. She mouthed silently, "You okay?" I nodded quickly, too quickly, forcing a smile. She didn't look convinced. The rehearsal dinner had been the first crack. Jason's hand on Rachel's back. The long glances, the shared jokes I wasn't part of. I'd told myself I was imagining. Things that I was tired, stressed, overthinking. A woman like me should just let it go, right? But when Rachel walked in that morning, draped in white, glowing like she was the bride, not me, the knot in my stomach hardened. I caught Jason looking at her just for a second, his jaw tightening, his eyes darting away when I noticed. My chest went cold. I told myself it was fine. I told myself to focus. This was my day. This was my dream. I couldn't let petty doubts ruin it. So I plastered on the smile, touched up my lipstick, and waited for the ceremony to begin. But under the surface, my heart pounded. My hands shook slightly as I adjusted my veil. I felt Sophie's steadying grip on my shoulders, her voice low in my ear. "You sure you're okay, Em?" I nodded again, still too quickly. I tried to push the thoughts down, but they circled like vultures. Jason's distance, Rachel's smugness, the way they avoided standing too close to each other when anyone was looking. My stomach churned. The guests arrived. The music started. My father took my arm, smiling proudly. And I walked down the aisle, every step heavy with a truth I hadn't wanted to name. Jason's smile waited at the altar. Rachel stood just behind him, her white dress glowing under the lights. I told myself to breathe, to push through, to get through this day. But deep down I knew something was broken, and the worst part, I already knew who broke it. A woman like me should just let it go, right? That's what I whispered to myself as the ceremony unfolded, every word blurring, every vow trembling on my tongue. I felt Jason's hands in mine, his gaze on my face, his smile steady. But something inside me recoiled. Was this the man I thought he was? Rachel stood close behind, her perfume wafting in the soft breeze, her laughter chiming too brightly at every little moment. I tried to tell myself it was sisterly excitement. I tried to believe she was just proud, just radiant, just happy for me. But every glance between her and Jason made my skin prickle. The reception began, and I moved through it like a ghost. Guests hugged me, toasted me, smiled wide and wished me happiness. I smiled back, mechanical and polished, thanking them all, kissing cheeks, laughing in the right places. But inside, I was crumbling. Jason's arm wrapped around my waist, his lips brushing my temple, his voice murmuring, "We made it, baby." I smiled faintly, nodding, feeling the weight of the ring on my finger. But my mind replayed every little moment, every tiny sign I had ignored. The late-night texts, the unexplained phone calls, the way Rachel's eyes lit up when his name appeared on her screen. Sophie pulled me aside at one point, her brows furrowed, her voice low. Are you sure you're okay? You look off." I shook my head quickly, forcing a bright smile. "I'm fine. It's just a lot, you know?" She didn't look convinced, but she squeezed my hand tightly. "I'm here. You know that." Watched Rachel glide through the crowd, her white dress catching the light, her smile sharp and knowing. I saw Jason watching her from across the room, his expression unreadable. My stomach twisted hard. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling the ache bloom deeper. Was I crazy? Was I jealous? Was I inventing something that wasn't there? Jason had always been good at making me question myself. Always so charming, so smooth, so gentle when I doubted. "Baby, don't be insecure. You know you're my one." But now, I wasn't sure if the gaslighting was blinding me. Every toast, every dance, every photo felt like a performance. I watched myself smiling, laughing, twirling under the lights, and I wondered who that girl was. She looked happy. She looked radiant. But inside, she was unraveling. Late in the evening, I found myself standing alone on the balcony, the cool night air brushing against my skin. I closed my eyes, gripping the railing, breathing hard. My heart pounded. My chest ached, and still, I told myself, "Hold it together, Emily." But deep down, a small voice whispered, "You know. You've always known." I stared out over the glittering lights, swallowing the lump in my throat. I couldn't shake the memory of Jason's lingering glances, Rachel's smug little smiles, the white dress she wore like a quiet rebellion. My fists clenched, my jaw tightened, and somewhere inside the hurt twisted, sharp and raw, but under it, something colder began to stir. He lied, she smiled, and I shattered. That's the simplest way to describe the moment everything inside me snapped. Standing there on the balcony, the noise of the wedding fading behind me, I let the pieces of my denial fall apart. I saw it all clearly now. The late texts, the flickering glances, the way Rachel's laugh wrapped around Jason like a ribbon no one else could see. I gripped the railing so tightly my knuckles whitened, the cold metal biting into my skin. My breath came out shaky, my chest tightening, my stomach twisting with waves of nausea. I had let this happen. I had closed my eyes, smiled through the signs, convinced myself I was safe, that our love was real. But love built on betrayal is just an elaborate prison. Sophie found me out there, her heels clicking softly across the floor. She touched my shoulder, her voice gentle but firm. "Emily, talk to me." I turned slowly, the tears brimming, my throat tight. "I know," I whispered. "I know about them." Her eyes widened, but she didn't look surprised, just heartbroken. She wrapped her arms around me tightly, holding me up as I crumbled into her. The dam broke, and I sobbed against her shoulder, the months of silent doubt, the quiet heartbreak, the slow erosion of trust pouring out all at once. "How could they do this to me?" I choked. "My own sister, my own husband." Sophie squeezed me harder, her voice low in my ear. "Because they're cowards, Em. Because they're selfish and stupid and thought you'd never figure it out." I pulled back, wiping my face roughly, anger rising through the grief like a wildfire. "But I did," I said softly. "And I'm done pretending." For the first time in months, maybe years, my mind sharpened. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was awake. Every lie, every glance, every betrayal lined up in sharp, cruel detail. I could see it now, the way Rachel smirked when no one looked, the way Jason avoided eye contact when I asked direct questions. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was betrayed. And now, I had a choice. I could stay silent, Let them win. Let them humiliate me quietly. Or I could remind them exactly who they were dealing with. I could remind them that a woman, pushed too far, stops being a victim. I took a shaky breath, meeting Sophie's fierce, unwavering gaze. "I need to end this," I whispered. She nodded instantly, her eyes flashing. "Tell me what you need, Em. I'm with you." The wedding was still spinning behind us. Laughter, dancing, champagne, celebration. But out here, under the stars, I felt the cold, steady pulse of rage solidify into resolve. They thought they'd fooled me. They thought I'd stay small, stay quiet. But they were wrong. Because this wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was awakening. I didn't sleep that night. After the wedding guests cleared out and Jason slipped into bed beside me, his arm draped lazily over my waist, I lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't heartbreak. This was awakening. Every lie ran through my mind like a film reel I couldn't shut off. His steady breathing beside me felt like a cruel joke. How easily he drifted to sleep. How confidently he assumed he was safe. How utterly he believed his secret would stay hidden. I wanted to scream, to shake him awake, to demand answers. But instead, I lay still, planning. Grief hummed under my skin like a live wire. I mourned not just the man I thought I married, but the sister I thought I had. Rachel, my maid of honor, my childhood best friend, my partner in crime, smiling sweetly as she slid a knife into my back. The weight of that betrayal pressed harder than Jason's. At dawn, I slipped out of bed quietly, padded into the kitchen, and wrapped my hands around a cup of coffee I couldn't taste. My hands trembled slightly, but my mind was clear. I wasn't going to break down in private. I wasn't going to scream or throw things or make a scene in an empty room. I was going to take control. And I was going to do it where it hurt. Sophie called me as the sun rose, her voice rough from worry but steady with resolve. "What's the plan, Em?" I took a deep breath, feeling the shape of the moment crystallize in my mind. "I'm going to expose them," I said softly. "But I'm going to do it publicly, at the brunch." The post-wedding brunch was scheduled for noon. A final celebration. All the family gathered one last time. Rachel grinning in white, Jason smiling wide beside me. I could already picture it. And I knew, with a cold, precise certainty, that it was where I'd end this. I spent the morning quietly. I dressed carefully, applying makeup with steady hands, brushing my hair until it gleamed, pulling on a dress that made me feel strong, sharp, untouchable. Jason watched me curiously, his smile warm. "You okay, baby?" I smiled faintly, brushing a kiss to his cheek. "Perfect." Rachel texted me mid-morning, her message chirping innocently. "Can't wait to see you, Mrs." My stomach churned, but I smiled, typing back, "Me too." Let her come. Let her stand beside me, glowing, smug, sure of herself. I wasn't going to break in the shadows. I was going to break the entire game open. They underestimated the girl who'd been watching. That thought repeated in my head like a drumbeat as I walked into the brunch. Shoulders back, head high, heart pounding steadily. The room was filled with laughter, champagne, and congratulations. But to me, it felt like a stage set for a final act. Rachel swept toward me first, glowing in a pale cream dress, the color dancing right on the edge of white. Her arms wrapped around me tightly, her voice sweet and high. "Oh, Mrs.," she gushed, "you look stunning." I smiled softly, pressing my cheek to hers, feeling the sharp blade of betrayal hidden under all that fake affection. Jason arrived, behind me, kissing my temple, his hand sliding down my back. "You okay, love?" he murmured. I nodded, turning slightly to look at him. feeling the cold bloom of disgust under my skin. "I'm great," I whispered, and I saw the flicker of satisfaction flash in his eyes. Sophie stayed close, her gaze sharp, her posture protective. She caught my eye across the room, giving me the smallest nod, a silent, "You've got this." I smiled faintly, grounding myself in her steady presence. I wasn't alone in this. I moved through the room calmly, shaking hands, accepting hugs, thanking guests. But under the surface, my mind stayed locked on one moment. The toast. The final toast. That's when I would do it. That's when I would turn the whole day inside out. Rachel laughed beside Jason, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes lighting up just a little too brightly. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay still, to keep breathing, to let the act unfold naturally. I wasn't going to let anger tip my hand too soon. Sophie leaned over quietly at one point, her voice low. Sure you're ready?" I squeezed her hand gently, a tight smile on my lips. "I've never been more ready," I murmured. And I meant it. As the brunch wound down, the host called for final speeches. Jason rose, glass in hand, his smile wide and polished, thanking everyone for coming, gushing about love, marriage, family. Rachel clinked her glass against his, laughing, her gaze flicking to me. I stood slowly, my own glass in hand, my heart hammering but my face smooth, controlled. Jason turned toward me, smiling warmly. "Baby, want to say something?" I smiled, softly, tilting my head. "Yes," I murmured. "I do." The room quieted slightly, all eyes turning toward me. Rachel stood just beside Jason, her face flushed, her smile bright, her eyes glowing. I looked at her calmly, feeling the words rise steady and sure in my chest, and I knew this was it. That was the moment everything changed. I felt it as soon as I lifted my glass, the hush rolling over the room like a slow, heavy wave. My fingers trembled just slightly, but I steadied them, inhaling slowly, locking eyes on Jason first, then Rachel. They both smiled at me, relaxed, confident, unaware. I cleared my throat softly, my voice cutting through the chatter. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," I began, my tone smooth, almost sweet. "It's been a beautiful weekend, one I'll never forget." Sophie sat frozen nearby, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, her eyes wide. Jason chuckled softly, raising his glass in my direction. Rachel grinned, tossing her hair, her arm brushing his just slightly. My heart pounded, but my words came steady, sharp. "And of course I'm grateful to my sister Rachel," I continued, my eyes landing on her, my smile thin. "You've always been so close to me, closer than anyone knew." The air shifted then, just a tiny ripple, but I saw it. Rachel's fingers twitched. Jason's grin faltered for half a second before he forced it back into place. My stomach twisted with a cold satisfaction. They know something's coming, I thought. I took a slow sip of champagne, letting the pause stretch just long enough to raise the tension. "Marriage is built on trust," I said softly. "And trust is something you can't fake. No matter how many smiles or toasts or beautiful weekends you wrap it in." The room had gone dead silent now. Every face turned toward me, holding its breath. Jason stepped forward slightly, his voice soft, nervous. "Baby, maybe we should—" I raised a hand gently, stopping him. "No, Jason," I murmured. "Let me finish." My voice was calm, almost tender. But the steel underneath made him freeze. Rachel's smile had slipped entirely, her face pale, her eyes darting between us. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. My heart thudded harder, adrenaline flooding through me. I set my glass down carefully, reaching into the folder Sophie had slipped me earlier. With slow, deliberate precision, I pulled out the printed messages. Texts, photos, receipts, proof of everything. I turned, holding them up calmly, facing Jason, then Rachel. "Here's to honesty," I said softly. "To knowing when people you love are lying to your face." A collective gasp rippled through the room, a sharp electric crack tearing through the stillness. Jason's face crumpled, his mouth opening in shock. Rachel let out a shaky breath, her hands shaking, her smile completely gone. I held their eyes, my heart racing, my body trembling, but my voice never wavered, because this wasn't just exposure. This was the end of their game. I just smiled, because they had no idea. No idea how long I'd waited for this, how carefully I'd stitched this moment together, how perfectly I had timed every word. Rachel stood frozen, her mouth trembling open and shut like a fish gasping for air. Jason's face was ghost pale, his hands half raised, his lips moving as if searching for the right excuse. But none came. The guests were dead silent, wide-eyed, shifting awkwardly in their seats. A few couples whispered frantically behind napkins. Others just stared, drinking in the drama they'd never seen coming. I let the silence stretch, savoring it, letting them both sit in it. Jason finally took a shaky step forward, his voice cracking. "Baby, listen. This isn't what it looks like, okay? Let's just go outside. I lifted a hand smoothly, silencing him with nothing but a glance. "Don't lie, Jason," I murmured. "Not here. Not now." Rachel let out a tiny, broken laugh, her eyes wide, desperate. "Emily, please, I didn't mean to." I tilted my head slightly, smiling faintly. "Oh, you meant every bit of it, Rach. You meant the flirting, the sneaking around, the texts at 2 a.m. My voice sharpened. "You meant it every time you smiled in my face and lied to me." I could feel Sophie's fierce gaze locked on me, a steady pillar of support at the edge of the room. I stood straighter, lifted my chin, feeling the cold, precise satisfaction fill my chest. I wasn't the broken, betrayed wife. I wasn't the humiliated sister. Not anymore. The guests began shifting, murmuring, glancing nervously at each other. Jason reached for me again, his voice rising, panicked. "Please, Emily, baby, let's not do this here, let's just..." I smiled, sweet and razor sharp. "We're done, Jason." Rachel crumbled, tears spilling over, her hands clasped tightly. "Em, please, I'm your sister." I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. "You were supposed to be," I said softly, "but you chose yourself. So now I choose me." The room rippled with a soft, collective gasp as I turned, lifting my glass one last time. "To love," I said calmly, my voice echoing through the shocked silence. "To loyalty, and to knowing when it's time to walk away." I set the glass down carefully, straightened my shoulders, and walked away without looking back. Sophie fell into step beside me, her arm slipping gently around mine, her voice low and fierce. "Proud of you, Em." Outside, the cool air hit my skin, sharp and sweet. My heart pounded, my hands trembled. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was release. It was power. It was the first breath of freedom after months of drowning, because they had tried to break me. But I had just broken them instead. They broke me, but I walked away whole. That was the thought pulsing through my mind as Sophie and I walked quietly down the path away from the brunch, the laughter and shocked whispers still echoing faintly behind us. My heart was pounding, so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs, but under the racing beat, There was something steady, something peaceful, relief. I had done it. I had stood in the storm, looked both of them in the eye, Jason, my husband, and Rachel, my sister, and I had handed them the weight of their betrayal, calmly, deliberately, without screaming or falling apart. I had taken the moment they thought they owned and flipped it in my favor. Sophie squeezed my hand tightly, her eyes shining with fierce pride. "You're incredible, Em," she whispered. I let out a shaky breath, a small laugh escaping my lips. "I feel free," I murmured, almost surprised by the truth of it. For months, I had carried the weight of their lies like an anchor strapped to my chest. I had lost sleep, lost appetite, lost myself in the endless cycle of doubt, anger, heartbreak, and shame. But today, I had finally set it down. We sat on a quiet bench nearby, the sun warm on my skin, the world spinning on like it didn't even notice that everything inside me had changed. I closed my eyes, leaning back, letting the soft breeze touch my face, whispering to myself, "You survived this." There would still be paperwork. There would be family fallout, awkward conversations, maybe even public gossip. But none of it scared me anymore. Because I wasn't a woman who'd been betrayed. I was a woman who'd walked away before they could finish breaking her. I thought of Jason's face when he realized I knew. I thought of Rachel's desperate, panicked eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel crushed or bitter or destroyed. I felt clear, sharp, awake. Later that night, Sophie poured me a glass of wine, raising it gently. "To you," she said softly, her smile warm. I raised mine back, the faintest tremble in my hand, a smile curling at the corners of my lips. "To me," I whispered. I didn't know exactly what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing. Deep, in my bones, I was done shrinking, done apologizing, done pretending. They had tried to define me by their betrayal, but I had rewritten the ending. And as I sipped my wine, feeling the quiet hum of freedom settle into my chest, I smiled. Because I knew finally that I was whole.